Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on when you tune in. Welcome to Run It Back, episode number 44. I am your host, Menelik Fernandez. The premise of the show remains the same, and the start of the show will remain the same, so I'll start it the same. Basically, on Run It Back, we take teams that have played previously and we run it back, so to speak, where we talk about things that worked in a game, things that didn't work in a game, how we prepared, the background knowledge that goes into it, matchups, the way we play screens, all that kind of fun stuff, the intricacies of the details that go in. And we, in doing so, as they say, hindsight is 2020. We try to gain a new perspective if we would do the same things or if we would do different things moving forward in the similar fashion of the same game. For today's matchup, we are doing the February 12th, 2020 matchup of the Stockton Kings versus the Raptors 905. And what has sort of become commonplace on this show is to have one of the coaches from the games of question join us. So today we are very fortunate to have the former head coach of the Stockton Kings, Ty Ellis, join us. And Ty, if you give me a second, I'm going to try my best to do a little justice to you with an introduction here. Ty, Coach Ellis was the head coach of the Stockton Kings for 2 seasons. He's been a G League camp director. He's been a camp director of NBA China at the Master Kong Elite Camp. He's been at the NBA China FUSC Coaches Clinic as a speaker. He's been the assistant coach with the Phoenix Suns. He's been the head coach and an assistant coach with the Northern Arizona Suns, assistant coach with USA Basketball. He's done player development with the Goya Orions, lead assistant with Grand Rapids, which is also in the G League, a lead assistant with the Tulsa 66ers, which, if I'm not mistaken, was in the D League.
Yes.
Sacramento Kings Summer League assistant coach, Phoenix Suns Summer League assistant coach. And as a pro basketball player, he has been in several of the more famous countries in the world for basketball. He played at Lucentum excuse me, forgive my pronunciation, Alicante in Spain,
Yep.
Acefa Estudiantes in Spain, Cajasol Sevilla in Spain. He played for the Georgian national team. He played for Eldo Napoli in Italy. He played for the Minnesota Timberwolves, uh, Besiktas Koluturka. Forgive my pronunciation, guys. In Turkey,
Besiktas.
there we go. Frankfurt Skyliners in Germany, Casademont Giorna in Spain, and he was part of the inaugural season of the NBDL, which is the D League originally, where he was drafted 42nd overall. And then, of course, currently, Coach Ty Ellis is started the performance group with his wife, where he's a performance strategist, and he engages all kinds of things that help with the development of athletes, including the psychological development of an athlete. So, as he likes to say, he is the head coach, not the head coach. So, Coach Ellis, I am super enthused to have you here. I'm really, really thankful for your time. Thank you for joining us today. It's a real pleasure.
The feeling is a mutual, man. I am excited. I didn't realize how long my resume was. It gets kind of boring after you start naming all the teams, but I'm extremely fortunate, extremely blessed, and I'm ready to talk some basketball.
Love it. Let's dive in. And I don't think it's boring. I think it's incredible to have a resume as such. And I think I have to do you justice by
Thank
letting
you.
everybody know, what a great background you have in this sport that we all love. I want to mention one thing before we start that I thought was kind of intriguing, and I didn't really notice it when you had suggested the game to me. The very first guest that we ever had on Run It Back was Charles Duberbray, who was an assistant coach with the Raptors 905.
Okay.
And the game that he had chosen was this game.
Oh
So when I
wow.
was going through the clips of this game, about halfway through, I was like, I'm pretty sure I've watched this game before. This is kind of
Wow.
interesting. So I went back. So I think for anybody who's been listening to Run It Back, and there's a few in here that have been loyal fans since the beginning, this group of coaches has been really great. But I think it's pretty neat to get the other side's perspective from this particular game. So
Wow.
let's dive into it a little bit. The
Mhm.
game takes place in February, so just over a year ago, and you're 2 days out from a loss to Iowa. when do you start the scout? What goes into the preparation? And perhaps for the listeners or viewers, give us a bit about of background as to how the G League works in terms of certain teams you play quite a bit more, and then certain teams in this instance that you're only going to see the one time for the entire season.
Well, because of money restrictions, we can't fly private and really play East Coast teams that much. And so we play a select few of the East Coast teams, and it just so happened that the Raptors 905 was one of the teams that we played that particular trip.
Right.
And was the reason I chose this particular video because it was after a loss, but then we played Delaware the following day.
Wow.
Not the following game, but the following day. So we flew to Delaware that following day and played that evening. And so that'll give the people an idea of how rigorous and strenuous this particular league is.
Right.
And so to answer your question, after we lost the previous game, I really studied our game. And I delegate very, very well. You know, I hire people that I trust.
Right.
And I don't have to go back and micromanage. And so whoever scout that was, I gave it to them. And so I didn't watch the previous 3 games. I watched their previous game, but I really spent time studying our loss. Because what it boils down to is I don't know all of my opponent's plays. You know, like there's certain actions that every team run, but I put more emphasis on my team and how can we get better.
Right. So for like throughout the course of getting to do this show, I think there's sort of 2 prevailing beliefs, and both are okay. Both are all right as to what coaches do. Some coaches really want to focus on their opponents. Some coaches really want to focus on themselves. So when you're talking about the loss to Iowa the night before, describe the process to us of how everything gets assimilated for you. You're working on focusing on your team, and you've got somebody else working on the scout for this game that you're approaching. How does all of that come together so that you can form the strategy that you want to do?
So I always do the video of our game to show the following day or the following video session. So therefore, the coaches can focus on their scouts, on their opponents, the offense and defense. Some teams have an offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, but some teams or staffs have scouts where they're assigned so many number of teams. And so they have their scouts, and I let them spend as much time as they need to give me a good scouting report. So I'll do our game. I'll watch the previous game of our opponents, but then I'll look at the scout. And that's when I have questions or I would know similarities between the different teams. And the one thing we do put emphasis on is personnel. Like I'm really big on personnel. The guys have to know all the positions because sometimes we switch 1 through 5. Sometimes we're in zone. And sometimes we're cross-matched in transition. And so regarding the different sets that all these teams run, I really don't give that too much attention because I know at the end of the season, I have 70 plus sets that I've ran or put in.
Sounds great. So with this particular one, let's go from general to specific a little bit. What did your guys deliver to you, and what they deliver to you? How much of it do you give to your guys, right? So like you're saying, you don't spend a lot of time on the sets. Your assistant coach, say I'm your assistant coach. I'm going to come to you and I'm going to be like, okay, coach, here's for tomorrow. I've got a little bit of video on their sets. I know you don't care as much about that. Here's the personnel. Here are here's Ellison and here's anybody else on the 905 right now. I'm drawing a blank on names. I'm sorry. Anybody else on the 905, here's their traits, and you go through that and you pick apart what you like, what you don't like, and how it's going to fit in. Do you then deliver that to your guys?
Yeah. So they give me all the sets. They give me the complete scout. And then I pick and choose which sets I want to go over. I always show the personnel. But with their offensive and defensive tendencies, they give me everything, their percentages, and then I pick and choose which ones I want to show the team. And typically it's based on where we are lacking in defense, or we can take advantage of their poor defense. And so that's what I highlight. I try to keep the video sessions 10 minutes at the most, 10, maybe 12, but very seldom do I do video sessions longer than that. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you had finished. I apologize. Would that be a combination of the individual traits and the sets that you're delivering, or just the individual? Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm laughing a little bit in my head because I kind of lost my Canadian card for getting Canadian players on the Raptors 905. I can't show my face in Toronto anymore. Right. I'm going to go to a Raptors 905 practice and they're going to be like, really? You can't remember Gray Notice? You can't remember O'Shea Brissett? Come on, get out of here.
Right.
So they give you everything, you get into it. Let's go to a little bit of the specific. What did you sort of decide was going to be the game plan for you from what you can remember for this game? Who did you want to attack? What coverages did you decide upon? What was the strategy overall for you?
You know, because we had lost, I was really focused on us. Like at some point in the season, we got to stop giving so much energy towards the other team and just be great at what we do.
Right.
And it's okay, but we're gonna focus on us. And so the pin downs, stretch fours are always difficult to guard, or stretch fives. On the flip side, I really forget who was their main guy. Was it Henry Ellison? No, it wasn't.
Well, I mean, subjective. Ellison was definitely a big thing for them. I think Tyler Ennis would probably be another big player for them at that time. I mean, you have to watch out for O'Shea, but I actually really liked Nicholas Baer off of their bench. So I'm just for the record, I'm a season ticket holder with the 905, and I went to a lot of their practices last year. So I have a bit of a relationship with some of the guys, and you know, I might be partial to them more so than their skill set.
Well, I'll tell you this: I know the rhythm of the calls. I know what plays will give me the calls. I know when the referees are going to call fouls and things of that nature. And so what I typically do is try to attack their best player. Every single game, the first quarter, I'm calling plays, maybe 3 plays in a row at Tyler Ennis, at you know, any bigs that they have or stretch fours that they have, I'm ducking them in. I'm not going to put them on a block. I'm going to have a duck in, so it's going to be a lot of contact because I know the whistle is in the offensive, also on the offensive side's favor. I know Eric Mika sets really hard screens. And so if Tyler Ennis is a point guard, I'm going to crack him. You know, I'm going to call plays where Eric is going to sprint up, screen him real hard.
Was that him or me? Do you guys?
Not me. He can pick and rolls well. And so I know that.
Right. I have it in the clips. We'll go through it when we talk about stuff. I think the first 2 plays you went directly at Ellison with Mika, and you ended up with a couple of nice sets out of it. So that's there for us. So in terms of what you're giving the guys, I want to go back a little bit here. Do they get a paper report in addition to the film, or is it just yeah, they do. So I would assume that's basically just like 1 page. Sorry, Coach Ellis, I'm losing you a little bit there. What?
No, it's about. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
am I back?
Yeah, you are, sir. There we go. Yeah, I got you.
All right, I'm so sorry. No, and so no, I give them 3 pieces of paper. You know, the first sheet are the game keys, defensive keys, offensive keys. They're important statistics. Then the next 2 pages are personnel. And I also put initials on every single paper. So if I see a paper in the locker room or somewhere where it shouldn't be, I know whose it is. And then they have to, they could be in big trouble.
They're responsible for it.
Yes.
Awesome. I like it. On those papers, do you give each player their particular matchup? Or do you just sort of give everybody's traits so that everybody has some, like I notice you switch a lot in this game. So Do you sort of let everybody understand how to play everybody?
So in the video, I go over every player's tendencies, and then
Okay.
we'll circle back right before the game start. Then I will assign who's guarding who. But as I go through the tendencies in the game, I may say, Eric Mika, tell me about Tyler Ennis.
Right.
So although Eric is a center, he should know the tendencies of the point guard,
Right.
right? And so I make I ask questions cross positioned, so they know that they have to study every single player. So when I call upon them, they know this.
I love
And
it.
if you don't know this, that affects your playing time because I can't trust you.
I actually really love it. So, I mean, again, throughout this, excuse me, these kinds of questions, you really start to see the different way that different coaches do similar type things. And there's no right or wrong answer in any scenario. There are, however, certain people that like I align more with in terms of what they're doing. And I personally like to do cross position stuff as well. We switch a lot and we don't have true positions where I'm at. We're, our biggest guy is 6'5". So he's got to be able to switch onto a guard and contain him. So obviously a little bit different in the talent that I work with, but I mean, you still gotta deal with it.
Right.
Let's talk about like overall type things with your rotations. What is your philosophy on how deep you like to go? Do you use substitution charts going in, or are you doing it more on feel of the game as to what's happening? And do you let your guys know sort of when they're going to be playing at what parts of the game, so to speak?
I do use sub charts, but that's only for a foundation,
Right.
right? But everybody plays. Like
Right.
I'm a big fan of creating a competition, growth, a culture of competition.
Right.
And if a player knows he's guaranteed these minutes, he'll just dog it in practice or don't take being on time seriously enough. So I give roles at the beginning of every season, and some guys like their roles, some guys don't like their roles, and I understand that as a former player. So I tell the guys this: if you like your role, work your ass off to keep it. If you don't like your role, work your ass off to change it.
Sure.
And it's very simple. And if I have this mindset, the practices automatically become competitive because they know that if I beat this player out, I have a chance to play.
I love it. How about like in-game adjustment type stuff, not just with substitution patterns, but in terms of you focus on what you're doing. Are you charting anything with your assistants that might say like, hey, when we've called fist, we're this successful, or if we call 77 keep or something, we're this successful? Are you charting those things so that you can go more to particular things? Like, how are you making the adjustments that you make as a coach?
Yeah, I do have my assistants. My offensive guy tracks our offensive success.
Right.
My defensive guys are aware of the fouls, who's doing what, and at the timeouts we talk about those, But I'm not. It's more of a feel because
Right.
I kind of know what is working, and if we put in a play previously in practice, they may say, Ty, now is the time to run that 77 hammer because
Yeah.
I noticed that the weak side rests on defense. So we
Right.
can have that hammer action and it'll work. Or in practice, I always do the refereeing. And I tell my assistants, you guys do the coaching whenever we scrimmage because I want you guys to get, for one, get experience, but also two, practice some of these ATO ideas you guys give me all the time, right? And so if they do an ATO in practice that I like, I'll tell them save that for the game.
Love
And
it.
so I may call a timeout and tell my assistant Tyler, hey, go run that so and so play that you did in practice. And so Ty would go draw the play while I talk to the refs because
Right.
our timeouts are very short. And so I have to really get in these referees' minds and make sure we're getting a fair shake.
A little bit of harangue, as they say, working the officiating staff.
Yeah, it works, man.
Of course. And I love, I mean, you said it earlier, but I love that you trust and empower your assistants. I think that's everything, right? Like, you know, as having my first shake as being a head coach at the college level, you shouldn't be an assistant for me forever, so to speak. Mm-hmm. You should be aiming to get out of here as well. So I should be empowering you to do so. And I love that you do that. How about like in-game statistics from the things like the box score? Is there anything that's of importance to you there? Do you even really check them? Do you care, or do you rely more on the things that you delegate towards your staff?
You got timeouts. You're not timeouts. You're big key for me.
Sorry, I missed you, Coach. What was the big key?
In practice, every 7th turnover we have, turnovers.
Sorry, yeah.
Did you hear me?
I did. Once you said turnovers.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, man. All of a sudden, my internet isn't working. All of a sudden.
That's all right. It's the way that it goes.
But no, turnovers is key. Yeah. so every 7th turnover in practice. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying, what were you saying about every 7th one? And I apologize to anybody listening. Yeah. We're going back a little bit. So what were you saying about every 7th one?
Every 7th turnover in practice, we stop what we're doing and we run. I don't care what we're doing, we run. And I'm talking about we as in the coaching staff, everybody runs.
Oh, wow.
Because turnovers kills us, right? Turnovers, that's how you lose games, right? I don't mind losing the game, but we can't give it to them. And so I look at the turnovers. I look at offensive rebounds, second chance points, and assists. And so those are very important to me.
So when the areas that you have identified, let's say in a particular game, you're not doing so well in those, will you chew your guys out a little? Like, what's the method of getting them to change the behavior? How do you go into the huddle and say, hey, we're really bad on turnovers today, and that needs to change? Is it just those words? Is there an escalation of tone? Like, how do you get the guys to correct their behavior, so to speak?
You know, there are certain things that happen in the game doesn't require yelling and cussing and all that type of stuff, even if it's going horrible. Some days it's just not our day. The ball doesn't fall and it happens. But the undisciplined is when I kind of do my best. Ask the question, you guys see, all right? And some I know the answer, but sometimes I want to know, do you guys answer, right? And so very seldom am I screaming and cussing and yelling, and very seldom I have to save those bullets. I only get like 5 of them the entire season,
right?
But at halftime, one thing we did was I would assign somebody at the beginning of the game, and I would tell them, you have the half. So at halftime, the coaches go into their coach's office, and we're talking, and then they come out, and I'll say, okay, Tyler, what do you see? And if Tyler says everything that we were talking about, there's no need for me to talk, because they've already been talking about it, right? And so those are little things that I do to, first and foremost, empower the players. Because now if they go out and don't do it, I call a timeout, and I'll say, well, you guys said we wasn't rebounding. Well, you guys just told me what you guys saw. You guys aren't doing it. Or I can be that coach who just talk, right? And so I love to empower, and I love to get the guys talking basketball. So many coaches, we talk too damn much, and we don't do any teaching. We do more telling.
I agree. Self-detection of errors is bigger as you get closer to flow state, right? Too. So like I did a fair amount of background study during my master's on that, and how like better athletes, when they are closer to flow state, are better at self-detection of errors. So I mean, anything that I'm telling you, you probably already know and feel that it is off. So you should be more apt at being able to correct it than having me chew you out. As you mentioned, you get 4 or 5 of those in a season before your players are like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. And there's a buzzword that every coach uses, every Fortune 500 company uses that I've spoke to. They all use the same word, and that's accountability. Right? We got to hold people accountable. Hold yourself accountable. Hold the players accountable. Accountable. That's bull crap if it's not attached with ownership. There is no accountability without ownership. A player or person have to willfully embrace ownership before he or she can be held accountable or hold anybody else accountable.
I love it. Let's
go together.
I love it. Can we go back to one specific thing in preparation? I like to focus on this a little bit because I think a large essence of the game in the half court relies on this. Screen coverages. What is your viewpoint on, I like to make the argument of being a specialist versus being a jack of all trades. So for instance, in this game, it looked like to me your game plan was to switch the majority of stuff and to play the pick and roll with two. So my question is, would you teach one particular style, or would you teach one particular style going into a game and change for other games? So like, would your screen and roll be the one base coverage that you have and you do that really, really well, and sometimes you might throw in adaptation? Or do you try to do everything pretty much like, I'm going to teach you all the varying styles and let's see if we can go between them within the game? Sorry, that was long-winded. I apologize.
No worries. I think it's impossible to do everything great. There's not enough time to practice and teach, especially at the pro level or especially at the G League level, because your team changes every single year. And so what I do is I create a foundation, and that foundation I build on. But the principles of me changing the coverage doesn't change. Like, the foundation doesn't change. And an example is, if you hear the call, lock the ball. So what that means is the on-ball defender engage the man and don't look left or right when he hear the call. Engage. Do not open up your shoulders. Do not open up your hips. So regardless if it's the ice, if it's a strong, if it's a weak, if it's a switch, if it's a trap, if you're on the ball, engage. The same thing goes for off ball. Excuse me. Engage the man on the screen. If you're locking and trailing, lock and trail. If you shoot the gap, shoot the gap. But the foundation is engage the man first.
Right.
And so that's how I teach, and I just build from the foundation.
And then those other things, and Mike, I see your question. I'll get to it in a second in the chat there. But those other things like, hey, in this game, we're top locking, or in this game, we're locking and trailing, so to speak. Those would be scout specific for the game, but the foundation remains the same throughout the season, basically.
Exactly. Even if I'm top locking a shooter, Nick Stauskas, I can't top lock with space. I have to engage him on the top lock.
Right. If
I'm locking, engage him. So nothing changes with the foundation. Therefore, I can continue to build on it.
I like it. That's a really good answer, Coach. Thank you for that. Mike DeCracker has a question in the chat. It just says, at the youth level, what foundation would you like to have when they get to you? So, I mean, this is going back a while in terms of coaching we guys, but what would be the foundation, basically, I think is what Mike's question is, that you would like to see implemented first?
In terms of pick and roll coverages, like we talked about pick and roll coverages when I dropped it.
Sorry, Mike.
Discipline. Discipline is a skill, man. Like, you can be disciplined at the age of 9, 10. It will spill over into other areas of your life, obviously. But if a coach says do this, do that, right? So engage the ball. It's very hard for the offensive five to screen you if you are engaging the ball. It's very difficult. So therefore, every time there's a screen, there's a screen and roll, I'm going to engage him, and now I'm going to take away the reject, and I'm going to force him to my big that's in help. And also, as a big, you have to communicate. That's such a lost art with guys talking on the court. They talk about all this other crap off the court, but on the court, they're mum. No, talk. Weak, right? Strong. I tell my bigs to say it 3 times loud and continuously.
And in terms of like different pick and roll coverages, so like we're talking about ice, we're talking about drop, we're talking about switch, hedging, give it a name. Like we have multiple. So the question comes from the mind, like I'm teaching and I'm giving practice to young students. So age 15, 17, like that. What type of coverages would you say they have to know before going to their under 20? So like before they turn 18.
Yeah. So as a big, especially now, you have to be able to switch. Right? That's the foundation, being up and in a stance. Most big kids and big guys, they bend at their waist and not at their knees. Right? You can't defend the pick and roll like in the L shape. Exactly. Right? And as a kid, you got to have a strong core, strong glutes, strong hams. It's a process, right? And so if a big as a kid cannot defend a switch, chances are his ceiling, there's a cap on how far he will go, unless he's a freaking stud offensively. But he has to be in stance. Now, the offensive guy, if he sprints up, you have to sprint up with him and get in stance. The dropping defense is so easy to teach because it's less effort. But if you start off by teaching more effort, you can always scale back with less effort, right? And so have him sprint up and be at the same level of the screen. And when the pick guy rolls, you drop with him. Therefore, that takes away any weak side help, any rotations. And if they understand that at 15, they'll make a lot of money at 25.
Interesting.
Got it.
Coach, would you encourage more youth coaches to teach guarding the pick and roll with only 2 and not implement tagging defenses? And the reason that I ask that is that I find more of the pro game.
100%.
Yeah, I find more of the pro game is starting to go that way, where they don't want to employ other people on the floor.
100%. As an offensive guy, I want to create rotations. I want to create tags. As an offensive coach, if I know I'm coaching against a team that has a low man tag, okay, well, I'm going to manipulate the weak side. I'm going to put a shooter in the low man position. I'm going to lift my shooter. And now you're screwed. Yeah. Right. And so I always play in practice 2-on-2 with pick and roll. And they always say, well, coach, how can it's 2-on-2, there is no help. I said, well, that's the problem. You guys want the help more than you care about getting over the screen. And what if we played 2-on-2 pick and roll and you didn't need the help? Just imagine how much better we would be on defensive end. That's what happened to me in Europe. We played 2-on-2 with pick and rolls. Figure it out. And we got better. We got better at switching. We got better at me getting through screens and not getting screened.
The thing I love about that concept is that, I mean, you see it a lot at the youth level. Like there's a screen there, and then a player goes, oh my God, I'm done. I'm out of the play now. I've been screened. Yep. Whereas if you're playing 2-on-2 with it, it's like, I've got something else I've got to do. I've got to get somewhere else. I've got to do something else. My team is depending on me to do more. I do think that it helps effort for sure.
Yep. And lastly, with pick and roll, this is really important. The bigs do not want to set screens. If the big set screens, it slows down their roll. And if the big set screens, it's easier to switch that. And then you can do, I call it scram. If the big tries to roll the small guard down, you just switch with the tag. But in this NBA, they don't want to set screens because they want to put the pressure on the rim. If they put the pressure on the rim by getting behind X5, now you have to rotate. Now you have to tag, right? And so guards engage the ball, and it makes that screen 10 times more difficult than opening up your stance and running right in the screen.
Right. So Francesco has just messaged me saying he has a question for you, Francesco. is in Italy at Pallacanestro Forlì. So please go ahead, Francesco.
So, Coach, first of all, I'm going to play in Naples, where I know you have played next week, and it's an amazing city. I don't know if you enjoy your time over there, but
I did.
So no, you speak a lot about empower players and make them accountable, and I think it's a crucial theme, especially in Europe. I think we are a little bit behind in the idea of empower player and giving them freedom, especially on defense. So obviously, this freedom on defense has to be, let's say, earned in a way. So, for example, the ability, do you give your players the ability, I don't know, to read the position of the screen? Okay, go under at the last moment if it's very high. Or I know I'm supposed, for example, to make an edge, but I had to cover on a back screen, so now I'm gonna be in a drop. So because I'm not able, even if I wanted to be there. Like, how is your process during practice to empower players to be able to do that in a game?
Well, on defense, it's my job to coach and somewhat micromanage. And this is the reason why. Because if one person thinks left, but everybody else thinks right, we're screwed. Right? The defense, all five guys have to be on the same accord, even if it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, well, let me see it's not working and let me coach that. Right? But you can't tell me, well, I didn't want to go. I went under because he did it because he can't shoot. No, that's not your response. That's my job to do that, because all four guys are expecting you to go over. And when you do it at the last minute, that screws everybody else up. Right? Now, there's a call that I say attack the biggest gap, and I say that on pick and rolls, and if I have a drop coverage. And if I'm locking and trailing and that big starts to lean one way, go under at the point of the screen. If I've gone under 3 times and now that big is expecting that, lock and trail the top of the screen. So I do have a coverage called attack the biggest gap. But ultimately, it's my job to make sure everybody is on the same accord defensively. And one player does not have the power to change that.
Huh. Like that. So in essence, it's like, if I'm summarizing, it's kind of like an earned freedom, but they can't do it on their own accord, just out of nowhere, so to speak. Like it's a collaborative process between you and them all the time, that, you know, the changes have to basically come through you before it's freelanced.
On defense, the changes definitely has to come through me, because we. What if it's 3 players doing their own thing, right?
Coach, we only heard the end there. We only heard the 3 players doing their own thing.
I said we gave the scenario as, well, what if one player sees something and wants to do something different? Well, my question is, well, what if it's 2 players or 3 players? And now we have 3 guys on defense doing whatever the hell they want to do.
Right.
And that's how coaches get fired. So no, that's not going to happen.
Actually, the very first team I was ever on, the only time I've witnessed a player get cut at the college university level in the middle of a season was exactly this. It was the last straw, where at the end of the game, the guy just audibled the coverage, told other players he wanted to do what he wanted to do, and it cost us the game. They the last 3. So I have 2 more before we get into a little bit of film here.
Okay.
The first one that I have is things like how many to the glass and pace of play. I would assume these are similar strategies to what you have in the other areas, where you have something that's kind of like your base and you may or may not change it. But what are your theories on things like that, and how do you, if you do, adjust them within games?
You know, I'm not a big offensive rebound guy. I'm just not. And so I want to have 3 sprint back, the 3 guards, and possibly the 4 if he's lifted, and the 5 can kind of get down there and get busy. If the 4 is in the paint, okay, read the rebound, but just know the higher priority is to get back.
Right.
And the reason why, because 70%, if not more, of the game is in transition, right? It's not in half court. So teams want to run. They don't want to get out and run these plays and all, because everybody doesn't execute at the same level. But everybody can be athletes. Everybody can react off of instincts.
Right.
But just say we have 5 players on the court. How many you think are really good thinkers? Maybe so. The point guard is one, and how many of the other 4 are thinkers and not just athletes?
Right.
Exactly. And so I want these guys to think on the offensive end. So get your butt back and load up and take away that transition. And so I've had teams where I was really good at it. I've had teams where I wasn't, and the personnel of your team dictates, some of your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. So I said I had 2 more, and Michael, I see your question. I'll get to it in 1 second in the chat. Sorry. It's interesting. I always ask the question, and it's such a highly subjective question. Like, if you were empowered to take over a team today, what would you do? How would you start? What are you going to do? And as somebody who's had positions at various high levels, I imagine that for you, that has not always been the same with each experience. You have to spend some time really getting to know what that staff is like, and then figuring it out. Like, maybe this element is not going to work, and maybe that element is going to work. Maybe I should make the shifts there.
Right. The biggest thing we can do as leaders is listen.
Love it.
As simple as that is, shut up and listen.
Yeah, 2 ears, one mouth, my mother always says, right? 2 ears, one mouth.
Exactly. There's a curriculum I teach when executives or speaking to my staff. It's called I Lead. I listen, I empower and educate, I acknowledge, I acknowledge and articulate, I empower and I demonstrate. And those and that's I lead. And that's how you lead, man. The first one, we have to listen. It's very simple. If you listen hard enough, they'll tell you how to lead them effectively.
Love it. So Michael has a question in the chat for you. He says, as a head coach, and he puts it in quotes, obviously meaning head as well.
I love it. Thank you, Mike.
How do you talk to your players following the loss in preparation to play the next day? I mean, obviously you had 3 in 4 days or whatever it was here. Similarly, how do you talk to and prepare your coaches and their coaching following the loss? So how do you work with your staff? How do you work with your guys after a loss to get them motivated and apt and adapted and ready to play again?
With my staff, I'm a big solutions guy. Do not come to my staff meeting telling me all the problems. I see the problems, right? If you're gonna give me some solution, and I don't mean answers. Answers and solutions are totally different. Answers are subjective or opinionated. Give me a solution, right? So what's the solution? So that's a conversation with my staff. Regarding my players, I move on. Now, one team would go undefeated the entire season. We watch video. I have a solution-based video session, which means if you're wrong, man up and accept it. Learn from it and move on. It's not the end of the world, gentlemen, if we lose a game. I don't take a loss home with me. If I lose a game, I'm going home with my family. I'm safe. I'm happy. And so I have that same energy with my players. If a person misses a game-winning shot, that shot didn't lose the game. It's the other thing. Sometimes I coach bad. Right. And I'll tell them that. It's not that big of a deal. So let's move on. Let's focus on today and get better today.
Do you have tools to help gentlemen take, like you mentioned when you're talking about accountability, there's no accountability without responsibility.
Right.
Do you have tools that you have perfected in your teaching craft of how to empower gentlemen to be more responsible? Because I think, the vast majority of coaches that are in here teach or have taught youth. And a lot of the time youth are, I mean, they're exactly that. They're youth. They're not sophisticated enough
Right.
to always take accountability and responsibility for their own actions. What have you employed throughout your career that helps people develop and be better with that?
And so this is the thing. Every single time I'm teaching anything, whether it's on the court, off the court, I'm teaching something with my son or even my wife. I teach the why first, the how what, the how second, and the what third. How first, the why first, the how second, the what third.
Right.
And those three things allows me to, I know 100% that particular person I'm talking to understands completely. And then you mentioned flow.
Right.
Flow is synonymous with water, with movement, right? So flow is the acronym that I have in my gym plastered everywhere. And it's focus, learn, ownership, and work on you.
Oh, wow.
And so focus, that's the number one thing that players lack. The good ones have laser focus. The bad ones is difficult, or not bad ones, but the ones who are least successful, they lose their focus easily. And I explain this to them. You know, I put on a pair of binoculars. Your target is 100 yards away. You have to focus, right? And so when a referee calls a bad call, or when you're upset at me, or something happens that you disagree with, you lose focus. But the good ones, they refocus. And so I'm talking like that, and then learn. The ability to learn, relearn, and apply. That's a elite skill set that every player has to embody in order to be successful. And obviously ownership. I've talked about willfully embracing ownership, and then work on you. It's a prerequisite to work hard in anything in life, right? But
Right.
to work on you, every day, I'm focused on being great. I am attacking greatness every single day. Now, maybe today I only have treat, so I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna be on top. I'm gonna focus on my weights, and I'm gonna get better. Right? But that's how this business is. To have a mindset, and I'm gonna be better than yesterday, right? And so, though that's my tool, and as a coach, I can see when a player has been derailed, and it's my job to get him back on track, right? And it's an ongoing circle of focus, learn, ownership, work on you in every aspect of their lives.
I love it. It makes me think of two things, and forgive me for the cliche or the adage, so to speak. The first one that it makes me think of is Pete Rose used to have a famous saying that I've employed in my coaching a lot, that there's only three types of people in the world. There's the guy who needs the kick in the ass, there's the guy who needs the pat on the back, and there's the guy that needs to be left alone. And our job as coaches is knowing which one of the three that you're dealing with.
That's good.
And then the other thing it makes me think of when you were describing the acronym of flow and talking about all of it, you mentioned that, like, you know, basketball extrapolates to life. Well, Coach Lamar Barrett is in here, and LB does a show that's called Unmasked. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but it's basically the perspective of assistant coaches at the Division I level. So he does a great job of interviewing coaches and talking about what it's really like to be an assistant and having to support your head coach all the time and not being the decision maker and having to do all the workarounds. Like, it's a fabulous show in my opinion. So huge little plug for LB there. But he interviewed Coach Adam Hood, and Coach Adam Hood in his interview made this statement: the way you do anything is the way that you do everything. I might be paraphrasing a little bit there, but I think I've got that almost verbatim. And I really believe that, right? So, like, when I have discussions with guys about motivation, et cetera, and I'm sorry, this is a bit of a tangent before the video, I always try to say, the way you do this kind of stuff is exactly how, I mean, if you don't end up being a professional basketball player, if you're not one of the few that are fortunate to that, the effort that you bring and how you apply yourself to this will translate to anything else. It's not lost. It doesn't go away. It applies to everything in life.
Man, that is really good, man. You're 100% right. You know, I went to an NAI school of 2,500 people. Nobody plays pro ball from my school,
Right?
But I was committed to greatness. Not that I was a great player, I evolved decent player, but every single day I was focusing on how can I get better. And I wound up playing in EuroLeague for 8 out of my 10 years and doing very well. But it was the small things that I took pride in as well as the big things. I spent time with Herm Edwards. Maybe you guys know him. He's a famous football coach. He coaches at Arizona State, and he told me this as a coach. It was my first year as a head coach. He said, "There's two things going on in a program. Either you are allowing it or you coaching it. Don't be a coach that always blames the players. Take ownership." So many coaches, they blame the players for their losses, for their season. If you're banking on one player or your team to get you your next contract, you are putting your faith in the wrong people, right? Either you coaching it or you are allowing it. And I believe that 110%.
Love it. Just before we jump into video, I want to stress to anybody who's listening, I don't know if you really heard what Coach Ellis said, but NAIA school, 8 of 10 years playing pro in the Hero League. I mean, it's possible if you're a hard worker who puts things in place and does what they're supposed to do. I love that, Coach. And I mean, obviously a very extensive and successful career in and around the NBA. I'm going to move into some video. If anybody doesn't have any other questions, if anybody does, shoot. But if not, I'm going to move into a little bit of film from this game. Awesome. Coach, let me get set up here. Just as we're doing video, basically the format will be this. I will play each clip 3 times. So it will be 1 time so that everybody can get a look at the film itself. Then it'll be a 2nd time where I'll try my best to articulate what is happening for anybody who might be listening with no video later on. And then the 3rd time is all you. Just give me an idea of what you like about it, what you don't like about it, how it could have been different, any of that kind of stuff. Are you good with this size? Can you see that well here?
I'm fine.
So very first play of the game, it's your ball. You guys win the jump. I'm going to let it run through. And then, as I said, I'll try and describe it the 2nd time. We'll go to it the 3rd time. I think we talked a little bit basically of what you were trying to establish. And curl, cut, and the roll. So I'll go back. It starts off in what looks like a horn set to me. So we just allow them to space, and then there is a pass into the left horn or the left forward. There's a flex screen from the top left corner. The ball is punched. And then I call this a rebound screen from the triple post offense where you pin down for the opposite short corner. And then just a curl to the ball off of Mika, and he gets his little his roll and finish at the basket. So talk me through it. Tell me what you see. What did you want to establish? Maybe some options out of it, anything. And if you need me to go back and forward in the clip, just let me know, please.
All right. The one thing that I was focused on is getting a logo screen. Logo screens are extremely hard to defend. And so that logo screen is the low area. And so I got into that without just a typical floppy punch action. I wanted some movement. And I also wanted to get Robert Franks. Robert Franks have the ball now. Robert was supposed to set that down screen. I call it the Chicago cut, basically because of the because of the triangle. Right. Robert was supposed to set that screen and then go dunker. And then Cody was supposed to go up. But Robert ducked in, which he shouldn't have, but the play still worked. But once again, I do not want Eric Mika to post up. Post-ups are a low percentage shot, but that pick and roll right there is very hard to guard, i.e. Ben Wallace.
Right. Yeah, this is, I think in my notes, I even put in unique action. You don't see this curl to the corner pick and roll area, like the low pick and roll. You don't see it employed as much as you would think. It's pretty effective in my opinion, but I like it.
Yeah, that pocket pass is almost always open, or if the 5 steps up, now it's a lob.
Like it. So I think the very next play, they go down, they miss, you guys are coming back. And I think the very next play, you try to snowplow, and that's a credit to my friend Brant Daniels. He always likes the snowplow term in there, but you try to post off of this action as well. So we'll run it, and then I'll try to describe it for anybody listening, and then it's all yours, sir.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously the timing on this is really crucial. But basically, we get a pass to the right wing or right wide slot. There's a cross screen underneath that happens, and then another almost like a shuffle screen that's happening on the help side of the floor. And then come for the ball, and at the same time that we come for the ball and are moving towards the point, there's a duck in from Mika, who just gets it and lays it in.
Yeah, I love that initial wedge action. The first screen from Marcus to Eric is really, and stop. If Marcus sets this screen with his shoulder with his chest on Harry's left shoulder, Mika has a direct layup there. But that screen was poor, so no problem. Eric is supposed to get down low, and typically when there's a weak side action, every team has their weak side come in the middle at the charge circle. We call it 2-9.
Okay.
Right. And so can you guys see my cursor? No?
So there's an annotate feature. If you highlight over at the top of the screen, there's like a banner. And if you go over to the annotate, you can actually just click on that, and then you can draw on it. So it would look like that type deal.
Yeah, I don't know where that is, but
if you want, you could guide me, and I could try my best to help you out with it.
Okay, if you put typically weak side defense, if the ball's over here, if the action's on the left side, the weak side defender is kind of in the middle, which
we're talking about this player moving.
Yeah, and so if you play it to the DHO.
Sure, absolutely. Hang on, let me clear my annotation here. And play to the DHO, you said. So
yeah,
you get right into, there's that, and here's our DHO.
And so he's not engaged and he's not in stance. So typically most guys, when this happens, they're in the paint ready to help if necessary. So because he did a good job on the first screen, he relaxes. And this is what Eric needs right here, because he's so physical. And he just bullies him under. Now, mind you, I know how good Henry is on the offensive end, so I'm gonna make him play some defense. And so the first two plays of the game, I was going at him just to see what he's going to do, which gives me data for later in the game.
Love it. I have a question for you. Going back to the start of this clip, though, like you mentioned on the wedge, the cross screen action at the beginning, if it's set a little bit better, you probably get a post up right here. When you are teaching something like this to your guys for the very first time, do you mention that, like, hey, we might get this? Or are you going through the whole thing towards the end and then giving them the options? Like, I'm always very curious of how a coach of your level manages to sequence so many things in series, and the guys are able to flow through all of them, like, hey, we didn't get this, on to the next. And they do it so much better than youth do.
Well, when I break down sets, I break it down with groups of three. And so I have a thing called the blender, right? An offensive blender, part of practice. And so can you go back to the beginning of the play? And now, and I'll show you guys how I would break down this play. And stop. So I would have lines. I would have a point guard line. I would have a point guard line up top. I would have a 2-guard line where the 0 is, and I would have a 5 line where Eric is.
Right.
And so part of my blender is we're working on this. We're working on setting the screens, working on making this pass. There's 2 positions that are pretty much impossible to switch, or as a coach, you don't want to switch, the 1 and 5. So I love when 1 screens 5 and 5 screens 1, because that's an automatic mismatch if they switch. So I would have this part of the blender, and I would go for 5 minutes with different shots. So I would have Marcus sets his screen. Isaiah Cannon makes that pass. He scores. I would have a coach pass the ball to Isaiah for a one-on-one option. I would have Marcus pop out and the coach pass the ball to him for a 3. So that's the first part of the blender. The second part of the blender is the second part of the play. And so I'm breaking it down. Stop. I'm saying this is why this screen must be there. Marcus set the screen like this. Eric, take a step down. Isaiah Cannon get to the throw line. So I'm teaching these things. Obviously, they don't do it as well as they do it in practice, but I'm teaching the why it's important. I'm teaching how we do it. I'm teaching what we're going to do.
And then, like, when you teach the blender for those actions separately, later you would just combine them and tell them, hey, you remember this and you remember this. Well, it's just afterwards. So
exactly
this wide pin down, almost like shuffle screen, you'd be like, just add that on to the one with the wedge before, and now it's just a combination of the actions.
Yeah, and I love doing that shuffle screen because if a team was to switch that, Marcus would still be open. And so Cody curl off tight. So I don't know what they're going to do on a guard-to-guard screen. But on that type of action, regardless of what they're due, if they don't switch, he's open. If they do switch, he's open. But I need him to come off this DHO to pass the ball to Eric.
And how would you work on this timing with Eric? Like, some guys have this feel, and you don't have to say anything in terms of them ducking in. But with the ducking in, is there like a visual cue that you're giving him as he's coming off the DHO and now you're going? Or like, is it just get the feel and practice it, so to speak?
No, we practice it, and the blender allows me to stop practice and practice it because it's only 3 people. But if I have 5 guys on the court, they're thinking about everything else besides what I'm talking about if I'm going through the entire play. And so the blender, it gives us reps and it gives me time to really coach.
Love it. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
So this one is, let me see my notes here. Attacking their drop and their nail defender is what I said in my notes. I think this was the screen rescreen action. So they go under, you rescreen, they go under again, you rescreen. And then on the other side of the floor, I mean, this would be something that I would utilize, like stampeding the catch to attack switch, so to speak. I'm just sort of wondering if it was something that you had noticed, or if this is just guys playing basketball at a good level, knowing that they're not going to help from the ball side corner, knowing how to attack.
No, that's a blender action.
Right on.
So the first bit of stop. I want you to stop it. You go back and stop.
Further back?
Yeah, that's good. Watch what Eric does after he sets this flare. So there's 2 options that we have in pick and roll. Anytime it's a middle pick and roll and it's pressure like that, Marcus has the option to throw and go. So initially, Eric set this flash screen to Robert, and when he was going up to set that screen, his hands was ready. Right. But Marcus kept the ball, and now we just playing this action. And so, but anytime it's a slot screen and there's nail help, attack the nail and kick it, and now that stampede is always open. But that's what we practice on in our blender.
And those, everything that you just said would be the teaching points that you would use along the time that you're talking through the blender with guys. So
exactly. So if you watch Eric, what he do after this screen, he's ready for that pass. Did you see his hands go up?
Yeah.
Because that's the quickest and easiest way to alleviate any type of ball pressure, the throw and go. The Warriors do that very, very well.
I got 2 in the chat, so give me 1 second. I'm going to pull those up. And Francesco had to move, and Dennis is just hopping off. Goodbye, gentlemen. Thank you for joining today. And I will share again and get back into that. And give me 1 second to get set up again. So next one is This is another one. I believe it said of them going under and then him just pulling.
Yep.
So same player. I'm wondering sort of what your philosophy is on, and this will tie into a question later about transition threes. Obviously, yeah, you guys hit some really big ones towards the end of the game with Isaiah Cannon, I think it was.
Yeah.
But in terms of the green light and when a player can shoot and the read of a player going under and being able, like, does everybody get it? Is it earned? How do you go about establishing who can pull and when? Because this is, by some people's means, hey, this is early in the shot clock and I don't know if it's a good shot. And then by other people's means this is an all right shot. It's what we like. We're fine with it.
I'm with the shot. And the one thing I will never do is take a player's confidence, right? It's my job to pour into them. I've heard coaches say all the time, that's a bad shot. Bull crap, right? Like, now, maybe that shot wasn't necessary at that particular time in the shot clock, but I'd rather have a bad shot than a turnover, because that same shot helped us win the game, helped us win this game with Isaiah Cannon. So if I'm telling Marcus that that's a bad shot, what do you think the other players are thinking? Well, if I say that, that's going to be a bad shot. But no, that shot wasn't necessary. Now, that can be a topic of conversation that I can have with Marcus. But I need Marcus to take those shots. I need Marcus to build confidence, and I build equity in Marcus. That shot, I didn't mind because of the time and score. Now, maybe if it's fourth quarter, I don't need that shot from you, Marcus, because you just missed 5 of them, right? But my players know that I'm going to coach the hell out of you on defense, but I'm going to trust you so much on the offensive end. I'm going to trust you to trust your instincts. And if you feel it, take it, but take it with confidence.
Like it. So the discussion of it being a bad shot never comes up. It's more so maybe not right now for that one. Use your best judgment and trying to educate them, like, as to why you were thinking what you're thinking.
Well, I never say bad shot. Never. It's either necessary or unnecessary based on time and score and shot selection and position on the court. But I never say bad shot.
Love it. This one is, we got a side out of bounds. There's a zipper action to the ball, and then we inbound to the big near the high post area, pinch post area. And I think this stalls out is what my notes say. It stalled out a little bit in terms of what you were going to do. And then you went on the other side, comes to the ball. And then I think my question about this set, why I chose it, was basically after the stall out, what ends up happening is somebody comes, curls for it, and as he curls, he ends up shooting basically like an 18, 19-foot step back shot. So on the shot chart selection analysis by points per possession, probably not the shot that we want overall. Do you talk about that with guys in terms of trying to get particular ones over other ones? And then the other question that was associated with it is, what do you teach guys when the initial action stalls out, or if like one guy doesn't really know what he's doing, so to speak? So there were two questions about this one.
So when I'm going over this with the guys, I asked them, did you guys understand what I asked for? Because it's 2:37. That means it was a timeout right before, and I drew some up. Did you guys understand my drawings? And if they tell me no, coach, I didn't, I say, all right, bet. Next time, tell me. But if you guys tell me I got you, coach, I'm trusting that you got me. Sometimes they'll say, no, we got it. Okay, my next question is, well, why didn't you execute it? Right? And then I'll talk about, hey, Kyle, that shot wasn't necessary. We had 13 seconds. I think you could have gotten a better shot. And so, but if it's a stall out after an ATO, either I did a piss poor job or the guys wasn't locked in. And I have to find that answer out first before I move on.
I would almost call this like a Spanoulis action, because there's like a flex screen into the handoff at the top, so he comes up the gut. What was if you can remember, I mean, obviously this is going back a long time ago. What was the goal ultimately here? Were you trying to get 2-on-1 down the center with the single side on the help side, or like?
No. So if you go back to right now, Isaiah Pinheiro was supposed to set a flare action for Marcus, the point guard. As he's setting this flare, he should be receiving a back screen from Kyle Guy, our best shooter.
Right.
And now, but the screen was really bad. Therefore, Kyle Guy's man wasn't detached. He stayed with Kyle. I know Kyle Guy is a scorer, so if I have him setting screens and then coming off of a screen, typically he's open. But for whatever reason, or maybe I did a bad job of explaining it.
So, Coach, I have a question that's totally unrelated. Just the shape of this set, where it's like, I would describe it like a horn set with the other wing brought over to one side on the block or the first hash mark. Where did you first get this from? I don't really see anybody using a set like this, and I saw it about 3 or 4 times in this game where I was like, that's a unique action. I like that a lot.
Well, because I'm taking away their low man tags.
Right.
And so, like most coaches, they don't adapt. They do the same defense the entire season.
Right.
And those guys are easy to coach against.
Very interesting. I like it a lot. I may or may not steal it if you ever tune into a Fleming.
Right.
You may or may not see that happen in one of our games. We'll see.
And stop. Well, another key point. If you go back to the right now, if Isaiah Pinheiro steps higher to set this screen, that's an easier screen for Kyle to defend. Right. I mean to screen. But he didn't set that screen high enough, or he didn't step out. If he steps out, now Kyle can set like a back screen kinda. And now if he goes over this, the lob is still open.
Huh. So what on the flare, you would have your point guard flare to free throw line extended, or all the way?
No, only to the hash. This is just fluff. Because I don't want him to get too low, because he can tag the lob from the handoff action from the big who has the ball now.
Love it. Okay, so we've got a clip. You guys are on the defensive end here. My notes say switch miscommunication and no tag, so I'll run through it. Ball starts on the offensive left slot, and I think this is the set that I saw twice. No, this is not. This is just the basically the switch, and nobody helps. Ellison rolls to the rim. There's no tag on it. What's the fall apart? Other than it being sort of an eye twitch moment, what would you like to see?
Well, first and foremost, number 34, his name is Hollis Thompson. That was his first game the entire season.
Right.
He was hurt the entire year. And so Hollis you never pick the ball up 3-point line or lower. You pick the ball up higher, where this white thing is above the Stockton Kings emblem. Because guys are shooting the ball from this deep now.
Right.
But because he picked the ball up so low and he didn't communicate on the switch, Eric Mika was in a pickle. He didn't know what to do. And naturally, as a big, okay, I'm going to just take the ball.
Like that. And then at that point, at the line of the switch, 34 should be switching under Ellison.
Yeah, well, if you're going to switch under and take away his role.
Right.
But once again, and you know, that's Hollis. And Hollis came from a totally different team. He was hurt the entire, I think he only played like 6 games the entire year. And he was just rusty, you know.
And the way that you would correct or address this would probably be film after a game. You wouldn't even, I mean, hey, we screwed up, moving on type deal.
Yeah. Or even a timeout. On the timeout, he already knows. Damn, coach, my bad. I know. I have to talk or I have to engage. All right, bet. Next play.
Got it. Love it. We've got an O'Shea Brissett play again here. I think this one goes a little bit deeper, and then there's a skip pass before so the action that I wanted to talk about all starts here, and it involves a Gortat screen, and there's one more later on in the game as well, which I think is 2 clips ahead. So I think my question on this was how happy were you with the way they defend the ball? And then how do you defend Gortat's screen? So, I mean, basically what ends up happening here is we end up in sort of the right slot. There is a pick and roll that happens. And as he rolls out, he seals his man just above the charge circle. And O'Shea couldn't turn the corner, couldn't get downhill as he's approaching the double side. So my first question, as I said, was how happy are you with the on-ball pressure here? And then in the back, what do you do with Gortat screens and defending them? And I've heard them referred to as railroad screens. I've heard them referred to as Tice screens. But if you can see my cursor, I'm speaking obviously about there.
Yeah. Well, if you go back to the beginning of the play,
Yep.
and this is something that I say, and stop. Go back before the first screen.
Is that good?
Now, perfect. So I was really happy with Isaiah Cannon. Could he be a little bit higher? Yes. But the fact that he got over that screen and Eric Mika didn't have to help because there is no weak side help there. There is no low man to tag because everybody is loaded. So the on-ball pressure, the on-ball defender in the first pick and roll sets the tone for that possession. And I thought he did a fantastic job of setting the tone there. And keep going to the pass to Ellison, please. And stop. So there's a thing that we have that I created called the hexagon defense. And what the hexagon defense, I'm sorry?
This would come up. I attended a couple of your clinics this past summer on the hex that you did in conjunction with Rising Coaches. So I was hoping you would mention it.
So this is it right here. We are a no paint defense. I don't care about middle. I don't care about baseline, but he can't touch that paint. And I thought Eric did a fantastic job of closing out properly and keeping the ball, basket stance. And then on the pass, the only difference that I would like for Hollis to do is if you're going to switch, we have to get under that, right? But outside of that, I love what Robert Franks did by protecting the paint and closing him off and forcing them to a contested shot.
Yeah,
easy switch. He should drop his left leg and get under that. But Robert is in a ball, basket stance, and Eric is in perfect help position. I thought that was a really good defensive stance by us.
Love it. You when you teach your hexagon system, you actually put lines right on the floor and like tell them the angles that you want them to take and everything.
Yeah. If we have time, I can show you guys.
Love it. Okay. This is a 70s double drag play, and then there's a pin down, and it ends up with basically being like a catch and roll instance where he's coming off 2-on-1 on Ellison. What are the goals of the set? How well did you execute it? I put it in it was one that I liked. I thought it was a quick, easy set that got you exactly what you were looking for from my point of view.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, Robert can shoot the three. Robert can dribble. That's why having a stretch four is so valuable to any ball club, man. It is so difficult to defend if you have a stretch four that can shoot and dribble.
I find it extra funny or interesting because the 60 series and the 70 series, the Raptors 905 used all the time. And then you threw one in against them, like right at the beginning here near to get a couple of scores. And I was like, oh, taste of their own medicine type deal.
Yeah. And remember what we have a bunch of plays, 77 plays, but at the beginning of the play, at the beginning of the play, I'm gonna show you and stop. This gentleman at the free throw line right here that's horrible, horrible position. Because he's gonna be late every single time.
Right.
And I don't, I'm on my guys all the time about space. Like this is a very, very bad position right here to be to defend this action because he's always late, or either he has to switch it.
Right. Did you notice something earlier that made you say, like, hey, he's late or he's low on a lot of stuff? Let me throw a 70 whatever in right now, the 77 particular set that you were looking for? Or is it just one that you were still trying to gather data because it's relatively early and see how they were going to play it?
I knew that from my video that their coverages, I knew that their bigs defending the pick and roll, standing straight up in that L position, and I knew that they dropped a lot.
Love it. This one is the other Gortat screen, so it sort of ends up in similar action to the 1-2 clips before. So you get a top pick and roll. It's going towards the double side, and on this, Ellison gets out early, and he ends up sealing, and then O'Shea just gets to his left hand and finishes. So again, this comes back to my question of how do you defend that Gortat screen, and what do you see here that maybe could improve this clip?
I think the only thing we got what we wanted. The problem was Kevin Young got crossed up. I think that was a good move by O'Shea. It's bad defense, and now we got to learn from it.
That's it. So, I mean, basically at the point of, I think my note actually says guarding your yard ?
Yeah.
So at the point of him getting beat up top, that's it. The play's done at that point. He's just better up top.
Yep, and even if Cody was to come over, now Henry is open, right? Like, no, we just have to be better. That's all.
Love it. This one, my note says great sets. Pin-in, is it a play call or is it an automatic? So this, if I'm not mistaken, results in a corner 3 for Kyle Guy, if I remember correctly. So there's a drag ball screen or an empty side ball screen, and then the ball gets swung to the other side of the floor. You cut the 45, so middleman through type action. And now on this pitch and pick, he's attacking the center of the floor. And here comes Kyle Guy along. So he cut the 45. Here he comes along the baseline. I was wondering, is this a play call, or is the pin-in screen by number 28? Do you allow him to do different things on different plays on the help side of the floor and sort of utilize what he feels is best, or is this specific for Kyle Guy?
No, that was a play we actually worked on. I saw some similarities from Golden State, how they cut that slot guy,
right?
And if it's Steph, it's an automatic pin down, and that pin in rather. That corner screen is very hard to defend.
I would agree.
It's very hard, but it's a very underutilized action. But anytime you cut that slot guy, typically because I'm cutting to weak side, his defender stays in weak side,
right?
Which is a perfect screen for that corner.
Love it. This one is a defensive clip. I'm just trying to pick up the pace a little bit and be respectful of your time.
No worries.
The big joke is that I always end up going over time, and I got to get better at that, obviously. So this one is defending the relay pass on your switch and the employment of tagging is my notes. So basically what ends up happening here, if I remember correctly, this is a stagger away. He curls it. He gets nothing out of it. So he comes back out to the slot, and then it ends up being a pick and roll. The pick and roll is going towards what is about to become the double side. And then he just slides out early. So like they know that you're switching, and they use the relay to get it down the center of the floor. What changes, if anything? What do you see? How could it be better? All of that fun stuff.
Yeah, I was really happy with that first switch off of the pin down.
Right.
I thought they yelled switch, and he opened up his stance, but Isaiah Cannon didn't get under the roll. Was it? No, it was Marcus. No, it's Isaiah. I don't think a switch was necessary because it really wasn't a screen. If you engage the ball, there is no screen.
Right. No screen, no scheme, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. And so I thought this particular Raptors player that big and Tyler Ennis did a phenomenal job of executing that action. But it is not the responsibility of Robert Franks on the weak side to stop that roll.
It's the two guys that are involved at the top to play it better.
Exactly.
So if they went to this a second or a third time in a row, would you and they kept getting the slip, would that be a moment that you need to call a timeout and burn something? Or
yeah, because that's an easy fix. That's an easy fix. And yeah, timeout. Like, I don't care. I'll burn them. You know, especially in the first half or the third quarter. Like, I'm not gonna try to wait for the mandatory, and it's early. If it's 10:40, I'm calling it, because that's the difference of a 10-0 run.
Right. Transition 3 here, and I mean, this is a big one just for anybody listening. During the fourth quarter, you guys were down 16 points in this game, and you came back and ended up winning the game. So obviously there was a lot of momentum that had happened. At this particular, it's just under 6, and the score is 91-85 for the 905. And Isaiah Kanan comes down, I believe it's Isaiah, and just pulls a quick 3. And I mean, he bottoms it. But, you know, what's your philosophy on time, score, player shooting it at this point? And I think you kind of answered it, obviously, previously in terms of what you're saying. But, I mean, how do you feel about it? And when you look back, is it a results-based feeling, or is it just like, no, that's something I'm going to live with?
My thing is, man, let's go out fighting. We not going to lay down. We're going to fight.
Right.
And we just had some great practices. And like, man, this is nothing. Like, can you stop it, please?
Yeah.
I have practices where we are down, where I have different scenarios, and guys come back from those scenarios all the time in practice. I'm like, guys, we've been here before. You know, man up, shoot, play with confidence, shoot the ball, D up. You know, we can beat this team. You know, we're beating ourselves. We were missing a lot of shots early, right? And now isn't the time to drop our head like we did against Iowa.
Right.
Like, Iowa came back and beat us. So why can't we come back and beat them? And so when I have those type of moments, man, I'm just smiling. I'm not putting pressure on them by me yelling and barking. And I smile. This is nothing for us, man. We built for this. And they came out and did it.
What I really love about the level that you coach at and pro in general is that, like, you're never really out of a game. I mean,
correct.
You can say that all the time, but the ability to score the ball is quite a bit different than it can be at certain youth levels. So it's, I mean, you really you have to believe that you can do it because you can.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think this game, I brought Isaiah Kennan to the side and say, bro, get busy. Like, come on, man. And then he's like, all right, coach, I got you.
He had 2 or 3 other ones that were massive as well. So the next one is a late game sideline out of bounds. Just for anybody listening, the score is 95-91. So the Kings are down 4. There's 3 minutes, 21 seconds left. It's an ATO. So he zips up, and then you inbound it to the big and give it back to your point guard, and you screen away. And then on the away, the man falls down who's trying to guard while they're playing the 2-man game. And he attacks second side, one more, open 3.
Yeah.
Exactly as you drew it up, so to speak, or
you know what? I would be just a bold-faced liar if I tell you guys that's what I meant to happen. You know, I was more excited with that extra pass to the corner.
Right.
But you know, the 905, they're trying to win too, you know, but the confidence, like, Robert knew that shot was going in. You know, and it's those types of things that I'm really like. Cody could have taken that shot, you know, but he wanted something better, you know. And so I was more happy with the way we played together.
So I love that. When you're drawing up what you're drawing up, do you tell your guys, anything along the lines of like, look for something better, get deeper if you have to. If the primary action's not there, stay relaxed. Do you talk about any of that sort of stuff at all from the teaching side point, or are you just you're trusting your guys that they're good enough that if they don't get the primary action, they're going to get to something else?
Yeah, no, not when I'm drawing up. Maybe before I draw it up, I'm talking in a general sense. Let's focus on good to great shots. Let's focus on paint threes. Let's touch that paint. Good things happen whenever we touch the paint, and then I'll draw some up like that. But in a general statement, that's a common statement, man. Touch the paint. Touch the paint.
Right. Love it. The next one is just basically another one of Kanan's threes. It's pretty much like a heat check at this point, where he just dribbles up to the left wing and hits it. I just really included it more so for the point of showing this is where you take the lead. You're under 2 minutes. So you go from being down 1 to being up 2. And then there was a unique action here that I liked, is what my notes say. So it's, again, like a horn set. And then this is, again, the alignment that I was talking to you about, where you're like a horn set, but you brought your one player into the box. And I saw it a few times in here, and I really liked it. And you post the ball, and you get some second side action, if I remember correctly, on this. So he stays calm, 2 feet in the paint, cut the 45 from the help side, and end up with a layup. So my question was twofold on this. Is there a visual cue or time to know when to cut the 45? And for your guard who ends up with the ball in the post, arriving on 2 feet and being able to stay calm and play off of the 2 in the paint, are you a proponent of that, or do you prefer going off of 1, or do you prefer there's time and place? And I'm sorry.
So there's 2 things that I wanted to attack Tyler with Cody Demps. He's a bigger guard.
Right.
And so that was the action. Tyler played phenomenal defense. But there's 2 things that we do in a blender that I see. If you go back until the post catch.
Sorry. Let's get right here.
And stop. Oh, right there. Stop. Perfect. And so let Eric go down some. Eric Mika, the big, and stop. And so what we do, I learned this in Europe. I call it tandem. So if Cody dribbles baseline, Eric goes middle. If Cody dribbles middle, Eric goes baseline, which frees up that shot or that cut.
Love it.
So that's a blender action that we do all the time. We never cut from the corner. The corner is always a bailout spot. And so he read the defender and cut. And I thought that's a blender action that we work on that I really highlighted in the next video session with our players.
Coach Ellis, sorry, quick question on this. So if Cody Demps goes baseline and number 12, Eric Mika goes, we would call it teeing up. If he goes to the rim line in the center, would he still cut the 45?
No.
He can only cut if Demps goes to the center of the floor.
Yeah, well, in this action, because it'll be mucked up.
Got it.
And so we're hoping he beats his man baseline, and now Ellison has to help baseline, which gives Eric that drop pass for the touch shot or dunk.
Love it. And then the last one, I mean, basically end of game, 7 seconds left, their side out of bounds. It's an ATO. So they're trying to tie the game, basically. What are you telling your guys in the huddle? Do you have any idea of what JAMA runs or what he's going to try to establish? Have you scouted his end of game? Like, what are you telling your guys? Or is it just a switch everything philosophy at this point type deal and play good defense?
I have no idea what JAMA is running. And typically end of game plays or plays that they think of based on the time and score or whatever. So I was the only debate I was having with myself, should I foul? Right? That was the only debate. And looking back on it, I should have fouled. Right? And then make it a free throw contest. But I'm thinking switch 1 through 5, talk it out, talk, touch, take.
Love it. The fouling up three element, which I didn't mention, and I'm happy that you did. Do you have a standard philosophy that you tell your guys, or is it something that you said you were debating it? Like, would you have the rest of the way have now decided, I think I'm going to foul up three the rest of the way in this season?
No, like I talked about it with my staff. Some said foul, some said I don't know, some said do what you want.
Right.
But at that point, I just made the decision not to.
And if you decide that you're going to foul up three, do you have teaching points so that they can foul successfully without getting a shooter? Like, is there a cue that you tell them to go to, or?
Yeah, if their back is to the rim, foul. If their back isn't to the rim, don't foul.
Love it. Last point that I just want to make, I'm going to go back one clip and I'm going to go ahead here. I'm just going to make the point that if you're ever back in town, I sit right here.
Okay, I got you.
That is my seat, like right where that sideline meets the baseline. So
right.
There's a chubby guy in a bright sweater sitting there.
I got you.
Come and say hello, of course.
Perfect.
So I'm going to stop my share, and that's all that I have, unless anybody has some questions for Coach before we finish the recording. I'm just going to say, Coach Ellis, I mean, obviously I was in several of your speeches clinics during the summer through the Rising Coaches Association, and got to know you a little bit through that. And I think that, as I've said to you before, you carry yourself in such a high regard, in my opinion. Like, you're such a gentleman to somebody that you barely even know, always answer texts, always answer calls. And I think that's fantastic. To a small time guy who's up here in Canada, just trying to learn and trying to get better. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for doing this. It's really genuinely appreciated. And, hopefully you've enjoyed the experience. And when we finish, have some feedback for me. But I want to thank you sincerely for taking the time to do this. It really means a lot to me, and I really appreciate it. We've been pretty locked down up here, and I say it all the time at the end.
Right.
So, like, the ability to learn from coaches such as yourself has been a real release of stress and a real feeling of belonging. So thank you.
Well, the feeling is mutual, man. Like, I love talking hoops. I love talking to other coaches, and I love learning. And I've had some success as a player and a little success as a coach. But bro, I'm still young in this game. I have a lot to learn. Whenever I go on vacations. I'm going on one next week. I'm sorry.
There you go.
but whenever I go on interviews, they always ask a question. So what separates you? And I said, I know that I don't know. I know some things about basketball, but I also know that this game is forever evolving, and I don't know everything. Right. But I promise you, I'm going to learn. And so, man, I'm very thankful, man. I have my niche, I guess, and I'm hopeful that I'll continue to grow. But if I don't, I care about people, and that's a lost skill. That's a lost character trait in this business, because people always use the excuse, well, that's the business. Bull crap. You treat people how you want to be treated. It's very simple. Right. And that's what I try to do.
And I appreciate you for it. And lastly, I always like to thank all the coaches that sit in and listen and ask questions every week. There's some coaches in here that, I mean, I've been fortunate to develop relationships with them, but they take time every week to sit down and listen to this. And it's created a little bit of a community of coaches who want to listen to other speakers. So I think that's fantastic. And I thank all of you gentlemen for that sincerely. Next week I've got Marcus Kirkland on, actually.
Nice.
So nice. D2 Wingate, really, really good speaker in my opinion. So that'll be exciting. Coach, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording here. Please feel free to hang out for a bit if you want to. Thank you, gentlemen.